Thanks for joining the Dating with Katy podcast. Today we're diving in deep to something that I think almost everybody needs to deal with in dating, and that is called your soul ties. Now, some people will say, well, I don't have to deal with it, Katy. That's because they're actually not deeply spiritual and don't have that kind of intention. So if that's not you, I get it, but you still realize that when you are doing these things, you are creating soul ties with somebody else. So maybe stick around and listen. Well, I hope you've had a chance to listen to my last podcast. I actually just came back from hibernation. I enjoyed my summer. I hibernate in the summer. Like, I'm out. I bounce. I lay out. I go out. I do everything outside of here. So sitting inside of a room always is torture on me. But these podcasts are special to me. These 100 first podcasts are going to be me telling you my opinion as a matchmaker of 10 years, as someone who got a second round on marriage and is doing a relationship. And even though it's still work, I don't want it to be hard. I am so sad about all this dating. And next week, I'm doing a specific one on the man-demic. Girls, I know you're giving me a round of applause. Guys, you're going to want to stick around for that because you want to be the guy who stands out in the man-demic crowd. I had an event. None of these guys showed up. They paid even for the event. It was pathetic. We'll talk about it next week. But this one kind of correlates with what I talked about last week, and that was why my husband and I stopped having sex. Did you listen to that podcast? Very interesting. It is a Christian perspective, but I think Christian perspectives are good for everybody. I think God's best is always good for everybody. So you'll want to take a listen to that. And after I had done that podcast, I kind of reached out on my Instagram. You can follow me at Dating with Katy. And I asked how many people would stop having sex or aren't having sex before marriage. And 58% of my followers said, nope, it's not a big deal. I'm cool with sex before marriage. 25% said, I want to wait, but I'm not very good at it. Fair enough. And 17% of you said, I won't budge on it. Actually, a good friend of mine DM'd me and she's like, Katy, I am shocked by how many other people are just like me. So kudos for you. I'm proud of you guys. Then I asked for some comments, and some people said, yeah, I want God's favor and blessing. Hence why my husband and I, while we were dating, we stopped having sex. Some people said, no, sex is important in relationships and to see if we're compatible. Honestly, if you've never had sex with anybody else, you wouldn't have to figure out if you're compatible because that's it. You only had it with them. Some people said, no, sex is important. Somebody said, no, I wouldn't. There are far worse things than Christians can be doing, like voting for a Democrat. I did not write that. Somebody else did. I wish Christians took this topic more seriously. Someone quoted Mark Driscoll, who's a great pastor. I do follow him. And Mark Driscoll says that you can see sex as your God, which is like porn, which I will be talking about 2 podcasts from now. You can see sex as gross or as a gift from God. So I think, as somebody said, he said that episode landed hard, Katy, and that was from a man. So I gave a few examples of how men really should be leading the way in that. And ladies, you need to be holding strong to that conviction if it is yours. All right, well, let's get started on today's topic because obviously the physicality of having sex is what brings the soul tie. And that's why I wanted to do that as the precursor. And today's podcast, my goal is just to help you end any of your unhealthy relationships. Some of you are in them. When you're in it, we're going to talk about that. You just kind of need to end it because it's not healthy for you and it's creating a soul tie that you're going to have to work through. It's going to be longer and deeper and you're going to have more issues through it. Some of you just need to have healing from your past, these soul ties that still torment you, frustrate you, get you bitter. We're going to talk about that as well. And then I want to help you guys avoid both again. Let's not get back into these relationships. And I do want to say that there are men out there who feel this too. I know a lot of men aren't flippant about sex. They're not flippant about relationships. So I hope there are men out there who are willing to listen to this podcast because the gravity of having these soul ties, which is often the physicality with men, is part of their journey as well. All right, well, let's define a soul tie, right? It's the pain that we feel when we end a wrong relationship or when we behave wrongly in a relationship. Now, some of you have been in good relationships. They weren't toxic, but maybe you did do the physicality, the sex, that you really knew you didn't want to do. And so that's kind of why I'm addressing those wrong relationships that went toxic and that, and there's that soul tie, and we'll bring up some examples. And then there's the good relationship. There was nothing bad about it, but at the same time, you did things that you weren't really proud of. So we're going to be talking about all of those today. Now understand that there are soul ties with girlfriends. There are soul ties with like meeting your girl and your friend. There are soul ties with our children. So soul ties aren't always bad. They're actually great for creating relationship. Exactly with our children, we have to learn to let go of that tie. But forever they will be in our hearts. So that is the idea of a good soul tie. We're talking today about the bad part of when we, are being too sexual, too early, too much in a relationship with someone that is not deserving of it. All right. Well, how do I know if I have a soul tie? Great question. Here we go. When you have no peace, that is indication number one. When you were with someone or you had been with somebody and there was just always agitation. Let me give you an example. I dated cheater. I have 2 cheaters that I dated. Cheater number 1 is in a podcast. I think it's like podcast 32. The old guy, the rich guy, and the nice guy. The rich guy was the cheater. And fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So then I have another guy who cheated on me. We call him cheater because he's my second cheater, and I should have known better. And I knew he was cheating. I knew he was shady. He was fun, but he wasn't really bringing me peace. And I can tell you what, I was working at Peloton at the time, doing part-time sales. I worked with this kid. He was like 28. He says to me one day, he says, Katy, you just keep barking at me because you're so unhappy in your relationship. And I was horrified, right? Says this 28-year-old man to me. And he says he knew this because he had 4 sisters. And he always knew when his sisters were cranky in a relationship, they were cranky at him. And he was spot on, to be honest. And I was yelling at my kids. I was yelling at him. I was so unhappy. I had terrible acne on my back. It was just like no peace. And yet I still stayed with this man. And that was not healthy for me at all. So when you have no peace and you know you're kind of in a bad relationship, you're talking about it, you're sharing it with your girlfriends, they're almost sick of your drama too. Like there are times your friends are like done with your drama. Or when you look back and you see that was a toxic soul tie. You have a soul tie when your partner, because that partner should be giving you peace, right? And God also will bring you peace. If you don't have peace with God, if you feel a little like guilty before the Lord, like you don't really have your quiet times anymore, and if you're not a Christian, you're like, what is she talking about? Totally fine. But if you are a Christian and you're not really going to church anymore and you kind of faded away from the things of God, then that is not a healthy soul tie. Also, you have soul ties when you haven't forgiven yourself. There is a lot of like heaviness on your heart. You think about it a lot. You start, you kind of rehearse things in the background of how it's going to be when you get to this person. It's how it should have been. So that is this idea that you have not forgiven yourself and you're putting yourself through kind of a little bit of torment. And you haven't received either heavenly forgiveness. So you don't think God's going to forgive you. What you did was terrible. You shouldn't have been with that person. How did I not know? And I am not speaking to abuse here. My podcast does not go that deep. Sometimes if someone wants to write a critique on that, please don't, because I can't say that I am here for those kinds of deeper issues. But and here's the other thing: your soul ties have consequences. So even though if we have asked for forgiveness, we've moved on towards forgiving ourselves, forgiving that person perhaps, you will have consequences. So you might still be dealing with that. You might have an STD that you now have to deal with. I know so many people have herpes and, they're frustrated with the person who didn't tell them. Obviously, that person was not there to give them peace, did not have their best concern at heart. And I can say I went out with 2 guys and they both told me they had herpes early on, which is fair. You have to bring herpes up. I have a whole podcast on STDs. Go take a peek. All right, so maybe you've said things like this, right? Well, I just can't do life without them. I can't picture my life without them. I can't picture them with anybody else. That is not healthy. That is super toxic. And that is your soul tie right there. Maybe you've said, well, we've been together through so much, right? Doesn't matter. It's not healthy. We need to get rid of this soul tie. What about if you say this? And this might, probably not for my listeners, but there's a few of you, but it was the first person I ever had sex with. And maybe your kids are going through that. Maybe they did have a very physical relationship with someone at 16. I mean, it blows my mind that kids are now having sex way, way earlier than that, but the parents are cool with it, allowing it, not really putting any ramifications on our kids, or I guess boundaries on our kids to make sure it doesn't happen, because it messes with your soul. It messes with our kid's soul. So if that's your kid, you need to minister them, you need to love them, you need to walk them through that forgiveness and walk them through boundaries to not let that happen again. It's not in their best interest. What else have you said? You've probably said, well, you tell people this, you say, you just don't understand. Right? When you break up with someone and it wasn't really healthy, and then people are looking at you like, well, that wasn't very healthy. And then you say, well, you just don't understand. Or you say this one, but the sex was so good. Okay, those are not healthy exiting from relationships. Those are not healthy reasons to be in one, or reasons that you exited and are still valid to be back in that relationship. So let's talk about even more examples of why you might have a soul tie. You're confused and you have misery. So you're mentally mixed up, about someone, and are they right for me? Like, you should have a peace, calm feeling. I did a podcast before I got married on, am I settling? Sometimes settling is different. It's like you're wrestling with, is this the person forever for me? Is this my long-term partner? That's different than wondering if they're right for you. You should already know that if someone's right for you, if you're planning to do long-term. You just worry about, am I settling? So think about that. Are you really concerned that they're right for you, or are you worried about settling? The other questions you have to ask, is this really God's will for me? Just because you think it doesn't mean it's God's best for you or God's will for you. And if you're not a Christian, you might not understand this concept, but it is the idea that God has the best plan for us. And sometimes we make our own decisions and we do get the consequence of stepping outside of his will. How about this? You have an aftermath of confusion and you're wondering if you made a good choice. You second guess yourself. Maybe you're embarrassed about this last relationship and you're all just mentally mixed up over it. You don't have peace. You're sad or you're depressed because of the breakup and you can't move on. That is a big one. Now that's where this idea of like, well, you just understand. Okay, maybe you did break up with someone or they broke up with you because it wasn't healthy, it wasn't right, for whatever reason. And when I say, well, there's going to be someone better, and you say back to me, well, you just don't understand. Okay, that is not a healthy perspective on what is next in your life. Again, we only want what wants us back. So why would we want to be with someone that's an unhealthy soul tie? Sometimes you think that was the only person that was worthy of you or that deserved you or that you deserved. You're stuck on that one person, and that is creating a soul tie. If you have gotten distressed, discomfort, or discouraged in yourself because of a past relationship and soul tie, then we know that we need to figure this out and so we can move on. Maybe it is hard to move on and see new opportunities. And then again, it's just taking up way too much headspace and energy. And ask your friends. I had a girlfriend and I adore her, but she was with this guy who was just toxic. And everything about it, she would constantly complain about him. And it was like, what are you doing with him? I mean, the headspace he took up, he should have paid rent to her for all this headspace. And her energy, it was draining, and it was draining me. And I'm just like, girl, you need to figure this out on your own. I can't keep doing this for you. So those are examples of that could be you feeling those things. I also want to talk about one thing, and this is going to be a tough one for people to hear: casual sex. People have it, we do it, I've done it, and what does it make you feel like? Like trash. It makes you feel, at first maybe you feel sexy or wanted. I just got a text last week of a girl who's like, I had sex with this guy twice and I haven't heard from him. And I'm kind of like, well, that's what you get for not having a commitment with him first, right? And therapists call casual sex emotional anorexia. It is damaging to your self-esteem and ultimately generates deep feelings of rejection. And it makes you think your worth is based on your sexual behavior, right? And that is what I can tell you from deep down. There is not a single woman who truly wants to feel that their value comes from being sexy, having sex with you, and sometimes pretending to enjoy it. So side effects include regret, guilt, worry about STDs and pregnancy. And again, this is where it's my body, my choice. I'll go have sex with whoever I want, and then I'll just, get rid of a baby inside of me. Like, girl, that ain't your baby. You got a little heart beating inside of you. You got little limbs and a little brain. Don't even think that you can take that away. How about get some birth control and be a real woman about it and don't act like a child. That's my take on that. It's a loss of self-respect and esteem. It's often feeling cheap or used. And guys, if you're listening, women feel that. I don't think men walk around feeling cheap and used. They feel like bravado and I'm the man. You're not the man. You're the boy who can't keep his you-know-what in his pants and probably pressured her into a little good time. And sadly, you ladies, you'd probably agree, you kind of get pressured into it. Some of you will say, oh no, I wanted it. It was good for me. It was good for my soul. To be honest, it was just lust. There's nothing about love inside of there. He was just as selfish as you were, right? And I know, oh, it made me feel sexy again, Katy. Like I needed it for my spirit. Did you really? Because the aftermath, is that really what you wanted as well? Because that's what comes with it. So think about this casual sex idea. And ladies, I'm going to just ask you, if we stopped having it, men would stop expecting it. Tell them no. Tell them I don't do it. And if he can't handle your standards, which is the end all for all of this, this is how we get back to basics. If he can't handle it, he is not your man. And he's a boy. And that's fine. We don't date boys, we date men. And you're going to love next week. You're going to love next week when I am talking about the man-demic. All right. So just don't get hooked into casual sex. It's kind of like a fishing lure. Like there's a different hook and lure for every kind of fish out there. And these men know how to throw it out there. And sure enough, you bite, ladies, because he's charming, because he's good looking, because he fits your list of tall and whatever. And you bite, and then you're just stuck with a hook in your mouth. They just let you loose. So don't do it. It's not God's best for you, and you've got to get out of the habit of doing it. And don't justify your sexual behavior because you already have done it. Because you've already yielded, you can stop. My husband and I stopped. And man, it was hard. I talked about that last podcast, so go listen. Here's the best part. How do I move on from a soul tie? Well, number one, obey God immediately. If you are a Christian or if you have any ties with a higher power, you know it's your gut feeling. You need to jump ship because as I would say to a Christian, if you're in a relationship that you know is not good for you, is not God's best for you, then your spirit knows it as well. And honestly, partial obedience is still disobedience. If you put a little dirt in the water, guess what? The water is still dirty. It's dirty. So you know what? Jump ship, move on, obey God immediately. Because the longer you stay in it, the more you'll justify it. Number two, ask God and yourself for forgiveness. Like it's only the devil, the enemy, we call him, that keeps telling you, reminding you over and over. Do you remember what you did? Remember that guy that did that to you? Like, just tell that devil to shut up, shut the front door, because I'm going forward. I don't go back. I go forward. And the way that you do that is by making sure to speak into your mind. So I know a lot of you are all about manifesting, and manifestations come by when we verbally speak what our mind is thinking, because you can't fight a thought with a thought. I mean, you can, but they're kind of like battling. To win that thought, you've got to come back with sound words. So one of the things I do, I usually have Bible verses. Where's my Bible verses? On little note cards. Hold on, that's a different note card. Right here, like this one's on sowing generously, like how I can be more generous. These are all the promises of God. Here's my Psalm 19. Like the instructions of the Lord are perfect. So if you got to get your little 3x5, run around, write some affirmations like I am chosen, I'm loved, I am whole, I am forgiven. Whatever you need to do, you need to write it down and talk it back to yourself. Speak it out. You also need to delete, destroy, and decide not to revel, remember, or reunite with what was not healthy for you. I'm going to say this again. I wrote this myself. You have to delete, destroy, and decide not to revel, remember, or reunite with what was not healthy for you. So stop this idea of like, well, I'm just going to keep in touch. Block it. Block the number, throw away the photos. When I got married, I deleted all photos from any ex-boyfriends. Cute, but there's no need in my history to go back. I'm not going back. My man knows I am in it with him and that's it. And I would hope he would do the same. I don't need to see ex-girlfriend photos and like him reminiscing over that. Like, no thanks. And I just saw an ex-boyfriend at Mastro's this weekend. Oh, he was a disaster, by the way. So praise the Lord. I dodged a bullet. And he wasn't really a boyfriend, but a guy that I'd considered dating and gone on a few dates with. But man, like even just the idea of him was a little bit repulsive. Like, oh, like what was I thinking? When we go back and we reminisce and we think, oh, but it was so great. You actually like the idea of it or the idea of him or the idea of her. It really wasn't that great because if you ask your friends, they'll tell you about all the complaints you had. So remember that. Stop this idea. Just stop it. You need to create a standards list. I can't tell you this enough. Podcast 75. Go listen to it right now when you're done with this. It is all about standards and the next standard that you're going to have so that you do not fall into this temptation and you don't have to deal with your soul ties anymore. You guys, I care so much about you. Like my heart kind of breaks for the dating epidemic that is going on. And I just want what's best for you. And next week, I'll hopefully share. I just had a great woman who just got married and she says, Katy, I created a standards list. I held to it. I trusted God, and now I'm married. So stay tuned for next week when we're going to be talking about the mandemic, and men, you want to listen in too. You guys, thank you so much. Send this to a friend. Make sure you have given me a 5-star review. Do whatever you need to do. Subscribe, yada, yada. I will see you next week. And until then, happy dating.